Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to thank the witnesses for their presence today. Director Stone Manning, I have a bunch of questions, no surprise, given the size of my district, some 46 million acres, 73,000 square miles, a huge portion of which is Bureau of Land Management managed. I want to start with the Fiscal Responsibility Act, and in it there are a number of refinements, amendments to NEPA. And I'm just anxious to know if the BLM has initiated rulemaking to incorporate those new timeframes for your NEPA work. Have you initiated rulemaking in that regard?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. We have issued guidance on ensuring that we meet those new timelines of a year for an EA and 2 years for an EIS, and also the page limits within.
If you would be so kind as to provide me with that guidance, I would appreciate it. Yep. The second question, the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument, I think you now have management duties, authority over it. And of course, it's in my district, and I've been speaking with some of the ranchers who have grazing permits on that space. And they have been notified that their leases that they've many times had for decades will not be renewed. Is that your understanding?
Congressman, we're right in the middle of a resource management plan for Cascade-Siskiyou, and of course that's a transparent and open and public process. And I'm assuming and hoping that your constituents engage in that process.
Well, that does not answer the question. Of course they've engaged, and they've said we don't want our permits not renewed. So my question to you is, will their permits be renewed under any circumstances?
Congressman, the proclamation that established that national monument allows for grazing.
Say that again.
Please. The proclamation that established that monument allows for grazing.
Okay, so I read the proclamation pretty carefully. I didn't see that in it. So you're telling me, and I'm very happy to hear it, that if it allows for grazing, that's really good news. It's not in the proclamation.
Then I stand corrected.
Yeah, well, I'm happy for what you're doing. Don't get me wrong. I want those permits renewed. So yeah. So the conservation rule, it came up a little earlier, and I think you used the word compatible. It's odd because that conservation rule suggests that it's on par, conservation, with the other multiple uses. Mm-hmm. But I would suggest what that does is give the agency authority to, I hate to call it without regard to rules, to do whatever it would like. Do you read it that way? Because if you look at it, if you think about it for a moment, conservation being a preservation sort of a thing, it seems to be the exact opposite of, shall we say, any extractive activity, whether it's grazing or logging or mining. Tell me how you reconcile the obvious difference between conservation on the one hand and an extractive activity on the other.
Congressman, thank you for the question, and you've gotten right to the heart of why our work is difficult and engaging, the multiple use mission. And the Federal Land Policy and Management Act has been clear, it's explicitly clear, that multiple use includes managing for recreation, watersheds, fish and wildlife habitat, and natural, scenic, and cultural values. It establishes conservation as a use, and what this rulemaking does is put some consistency in how we lift up that portion of FLTMA to ensure that future generations, 30, 40, 50 years from now, get to enjoy our public lands the way that we do today.
So I haven't heard the answer to my question. If these are opposite uses, then how in the world can you have, how will you ever find compatibility? Because that's just, you're saying that indeed you could have mining and at the same time conservation.
The other thing that FLTMA tells us is that we don't have to have all the uses on every single acre. So a hard rock mine is a great example. We're not going to have recreation and mountain biking in an open pit.
Excuse me for interrupting. That's not the way I read your rule. I read your rule as imposing upon all activities, multiple use or not, this conservation overlay. But if I'm wrong, please provide me with the data so indicating. I want to go to the ONC lands, over which you have management control. For years, the ONC lands have not been producing the amount or allowed to produce the amount of timber that the law requires. Can you explain why?
Congressman, we are upholding the ONC Act, and we are upholding the resource management plan that implements that. The ASQ for fiscal year '24 is 132 million board feet.
Yes, I'll just say that the facts that I have here indicate otherwise, but I'm out of time. But if you'll provide me with the information that indicates you have been abiding by the requirements of that law, I would appreciate it. I yield back. Thank you.
Gentlemen,